From the summer of 1965, when they released their hit, I Got You Babe, through their very public divorce in 1974, Sonny and Cher won our hearts as America's hippest family. Join us for the intensely personal stories behind Sonny and Cher's public image, told through exclusive interviews with their closest friends and family members.
And I said to Cher, "What was that?" And she said, "Mother, that happens to be the man I'm going to marry."
Share the joy of Sonny and Cher's loving relationship and their early rise to stardom. And hear the intimate family stories of their eventual breakup and divorce.
It was such a surprise to me that it put me into shock.
Greg Allman, they were married, and 10 days later, she filed for divorce.
Follow Sonny and Cher as they struggle to establish their independent lives.
I love her voice, but I love her acting.
So I went, oh yeah, okay, I'll run for mayor.
Sonny and Cher lived their lives in the American spotlight, and the entire nation grieved at the family's tragic loss.
This is probably the most important thing I've ever done in my life.
Coming up next, Famous Families celebrates the uniquely hip family values of Sonny and Cher.
Loonies and the Bonos.
The story of the Bonos begins back in the days of fringe vests, turtleneck sweaters, and love beads. Sonny and Cher were an unlikely pair of young hippies who hit the big time with their unforgettable blend of pop music and goofball comedy. But just as they reached the top, their marriage fell apart. Sonny pursued a successful career in politics, Cher carried on with her singing career, and even managed to win an Academy Award for her performance in the hit film Moonstruck. Through the years, the Bonos have managed to balance the demands of fame with the bonds of family, even though the tragedy of Sonny's death has challenged them as never before.
Do I know I Got You, Babe? Does everybody not know I Got You, Babe?
They say we're young and we don't know. We won't find out until we grow.
Well, I don't know if all that's true, because you got me, and baby, 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 I got you.
Babe.
I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
I got you, babe.
Da 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 da. Oh, I love that song.
Sonny and Cher are American pop icons. Talented, famous, and on the cutting edge of cool. Sonny and Cher and their daughter Chastity were the quintessential nuclear family for a new generation. The strength of that image would link them together in the American consciousness through divorce and even death. But before all the glamour and the fame, Sonny and Cher started out as two kids chasing their dreams. Sherilyn Sarkisian was born on May 20th, 1946 in El Centro, California, and had an unusual childhood. Her mother, Georgia Holt, an aspiring actress, provided a loving yet unconventional home life.
I raised both Cher and Georgia and myself. I got married a lot, but I didn't know how to pick men. I was raised in a time when you did not go to bed with a man. You just didn't do it. And I kept marrying people because I wouldn't go to bed with them. My mother was pretty outrageous, so I don't think she could be too surprised that both of her daughters were, you know, this way my sister and I are. They were really funny kids. They had great sense of humor. They would put on plays for me, you know, and they were just hysterical. They were really good.
I think that Cher's mom offered her a lot of what she's about, but Cher took it further. She'll recreate herself and always come up with something new to be.
Cher's creative spirit and strong sense of independence were evident in her teenage years.
Cher lived a lot in her imagination, a lot. I was very teen angsty and dramatic and complex, and you know, I will tell you I was probably the most fanatical mother because it was just at that period of time when drugs were starting. When they would go to parties, I would say, don't take any of the dip, don't drink any Cokes unless they're sealed. I'm sure I drove them crazy. I was so overprotective, I really was. When she was 15, I was having trouble with her. And to keep her in school, Jeff Corey had a acting class at that time. He said to her, if she would become serious about acting, she could become a great actress.
At the age of 16, Cher quit school and moved to Hollywood, anxious to start her acting career. Salvatore Bono was born the youngest of 3 kids on February 16, 1935 in Detroit, Michigan, to Santo and Jean Bono.
He was a little spoiled. My mother spoiled him. When we went to school, he wouldn't get out of bed in the morning if it was cold, unless my sister and I dressed him. And when he was all dressed, he'd get out of bed.
When Sonny was 7 years old, his father Santo moved the family to sunny California. In 1952, Sonny was working as a meat delivery man, but his real love was songwriting.
I was writing songs, but I didn't quite click, and I couldn't figure out a formula. And then all of a sudden, there was this other 22-year-old guy who kept putting out hit after hit after hit. And so I just called him and said, I've got to work for you.
Spector will go down in history as one of the major producers of rock and roll of the early 60s. And Sonny was, would play percussion and just about everything. So he assisted Spector, but the main thing really here is that Sonny learned so much about production. The greatest thing that happened was that Spector gave him his walking papers one day, which forced him to make it on his own.
By 1962, Sonny was separated from his first wife, Donna, and desperately missed his daughter, Christy. To cheer him up, a business associate arranged a double date with a friend named Melissa and her teenage roommate, Cher.
Cher always says when she met Sonny, he had no desire to be with her at all, and he had a crush on her girlfriend.
When Sonny and Cher were first going out, I was really worried about it. He had a Prince Valiant haircut with bangs and some kind of an Indian-type jacket. And I said to Cher, "What was that?" And she said, "Mother, that happens to be the man I'm going to marry." And I went, oh God, I really put my foot into it that time.
Sonny's family had no objections to Cher and quickly accepted her as one of their own.
Sonny brought her over, and she just kind of bonded with my children.
I just remember being so impressed with her and thinking what an incredible person she was. And she was so young, she was just 17, and she was the height of cool. She really was.
Right from the start, Sonny became Cher's professional mentor. Under his influence, Cher turned her attention from acting to singing.
He was very good for her. He got her under control. He gave her courage to go out on stage, She never would have done it.
Sonny encouraged Cher to take a job at Phil Spector's studio as a backup singer.
When he saw what Phil Spector did with Ronnie, his wife, Ronnie Spector, from the Ronettes, Sonny came up with the idea to do the same thing.
Cher wanted to be a famous singer. She wanted to be very successful, and so all the ingredients were there.
Cher began to collaborate with Sonny on writing songs. They started performing together, billed as Caesar and Cleo.
My brother used to own the Purple Onion, and my brother paid them $25, their first professional appearance. I told everybody in the place that she was going to become a big star. Nobody believed me. Everybody said, oh yeah, sure, but I could see it.
In addition to the challenge of building a following for the act, the couple also had to deal with Cher's stage fright.
She was frightened to go on stage by herself. That's how come Sonny to go out there, because Sonny couldn't sing. I mean, he couldn't sing. But with him out there with her, she was okay. It gave her confidence. He was her magic feather.
Well, there are lots of things I'm afraid of, but I think that's natural. I mean, I think, what you do is you have a fear, and then you go, okay, well, I'm afraid of that, and you just go ahead and you do it, and you go, well, it was really horrible, or it wasn't that bad.
Sonny and Cher were married secretly, and by 1965, the duo was performing as Sonny and Cher, and the new act began to get some attention.
I mean, I remember going to skating rinks and bowling alleys and horrible places to hear them sing, but they got it together.
In June of 1965, Sonny and Cher released the recording of Sonny's composition, I Got You Babe, which soared to the top of the charts and launched them into superstardom.
They say we're young and we don't know. We won't find out until we grow. Well, I don't know if all that's true, 'cause you got me, and baby, I got you. Hey, I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Sonny had written I Got You Babe, and they knocked the Beatles out of first place for about a week.
I Got You Babe works for a couple of reasons, mainly because it's simple three-chord rock. It's got a nice us against them theme, which ran throughout Sonny's music. It's just a sweet sentiment.
I got you.
That same year, Sonny and Cher's success as recording artists led to the couple making a cameo appearance as themselves in their debut film, Wild on the Beach. Inspired by the success of the Beatles films Help and A Hard Day's Night, Sonny and Cher returned to the screen in 1967, starring as themselves in Good Times. Then, in 1969, Sonny both wrote and produced the film Chastity, starring Cher.
Chastity. She lives Freud's wildest dreams.
Here, stick your head in this basin. Well, you don't want me to make love to a dirty man, do you?
Chastity. She's not just a girl. She's an experience.
Ironically, it was Sonny's great love for Cher that led to the disappointing failure of the film.
So you know what it was? It was a brilliant script, and he should have never let me do it because he wrote the script, and then when it came time for his wife to do it, he changed everything because he didn't want his wife playing that script. He didn't want me doing the things that the character was supposed to be doing.
After the disappointment of their films, Sonny and Cher turned their attention to a much happier collaboration as they anxiously awaited the arrival of their daughter, Chastity. Coming up next, America falls in love with Sonny and Cher, and Sonny and Cher fall out of love with each other.
When we split up, it was such a surprise to me that it put me into shock.
When Famous Families returns. Gave birth to their only child, a 7-pound, 10.5-ounce daughter. They named her Chastity, after the movie during which she had been conceived. Chastity's arrival was greeted with joy by her doting parents and grandparents.
It was very thrilling, you know. When there's a new little one in the family, it was so excited, and Cher was really excited about having her own baby. It was fun.
I know Sonny was very delighted to have another child. He really was. He was ready for it.
He adored Chas, and his eyes would just light up when she would walk through the door.
2 years after Chastity's arrival, Sonny and Cher's career shifted into high gear when a CBS executive impressed with the couple's chemistry signed them to host a series of hour-long comedy variety shows.
Sonny and Cher became a major influence in television because they created a whole new genre of variety shows. Sonny created the whole banter between Sonny and Cher. Sonny allowed himself to be the buffoon. After that, many shows began copying that format. You had Tony Orlando and Don doing the same thing, and Donnie and Marie, carbon copy of the same show.
The show became a monster hit, and the public fell in love with the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour.
We did. We all watched it. We watched every episode.
You know, I always used to watch this show. I love Sonny.
It kept you tied to the TV. And it was fun. It was a good show.
It was during this time that Cher began her collaboration with fashion designer Bob Mackie, who made the daring navel-exposing gowns that would become Cher's trademark.
It was all about the gowns, wasn't it, really? It was all about, you know, hello.
But I was so taken with the fur vest and her striped bell-bottoms that she had on, and they were so low-cut. I thought they were the most wonderful outfits I'd ever seen in my life.
Cher's outfits even spawned a successful Cher doll.
There was grow hair Cher, and there was a Cher head that you could design the hair on, and mostly the Bob Mackie fashions really made the Cher doll, really set the stage for this whole new line of merchandising.
The playful onstage chatter Sonny had created to put Cher at ease had evolved into the witty, stylish TV show all of America loved.
The characters that they had between themselves, the chemistry that they were a great team. They really were a great team.
They also shared marriage with America, you know, the ups and downs of marriage, you know, joking around with each other, you know, they were just really real with each other, even on camera. And they kind of played their life out in front of us, you know, all their good times, their bad times, bringing Chastity on stage, you know, and they kind of grew up and separated in front of us, and I think we still love them anyway.
But despite a magical relationship on television, behind the scenes, their marriage was disintegrating.
They had a very kind of old-fashioned relationship, whereas on stage, Cher, you know, was kind of the boss and made fun of Sonny. And in real life, he masterminded the whole thing. He was in charge.
One of the main differences of them, you know, as they got more popular, more famous, was that they were less accessible and had to work harder.
Because you are together 24 hours a day, and that's got to be very grueling. I mean, we would watch them on the set, and one would be done after the first take, and another one would have to sit there for 10 takes, and it had to be very hard on the relationship.
The problem with Sonny and Cher being always Sonny and Cher, in quotes, is it took away a lot from their personal lives, and it took such a huge toll on Cher as a person that to her, when it was over, it was over.
In November of 1972, Cher left Sonny at the Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas and flew to San Francisco.
She just couldn't take it anymore, and she walked out, and it left Sonny a little devastated because he was so focused on making the act work that he forgot there was a relationship there.
Keeping up the pretense of a happy marriage for their fans, Sonny and Cher reunited to present an Oscar at the 1973 Academy Awards. In February of 1974, Sonny filed for divorce.
It was very difficult when Sonny and Cher had their divorce, of course for them, and of course for Chastity, and for America.
Sonny and Cher for us was a huge part of our life. It was a large part of our identity as kids and as part of the family. It was really devastating.
I have a picture in my scrapbook of Sonny and Cher standing on the courthouse steps, arm in arm, smiling after the divorce was decreed, because it would never last that long. I mean, there was always that bond.
Both Sonny and Cher attempted to host their own shows, but both solo efforts were quickly canceled.
There was something about the combination of Sonny plus Cher that equaled success. When you took one away from the other, it was like taking the crutch away. It was just taking away half of the equation. It just couldn't work.
On June 30th, 1975, just 3 days after her divorce from Sonny became final, Cher and rock musician Greg Allman were married in Las Vegas.
Greg Allman, when he's sober, is the quintessential Southern gentleman. He's bright, he's soft-spoken, he's sensitive, but he has drug addiction and alcoholism, or he did at the time, and it made it very difficult. Cher didn't use drugs. Cher didn't come from there. Cher had to be told by our friend what he was doing, and it was a rough awakening.
Just days after marrying Greg, Cher filed for divorce.
The first separation was well publicized. They were married, and I think 10 days later she filed for divorce. Cher was pretty much, when she left Sonny at 26, like the 16-year-old girl that had met Sonny, emotionally. She was naive like a 16-year-old would be, and had to go through, you know, a crash course in growing up.
Cher and Allman reconciled, and in 1976, Cher gave birth to their son, Elijah Blue.
My mother just gave me a curse that seems to work better than reconciliation. She said, I hope you have children exactly like you. And so I did get one child exactly like me. My daughter is a dream, and my son is exactly the way I was.
Elijah's cut out the same mold as his mother. Elijah, I think his biggest fear is being mainstream. He's like Cher. He's just extremely innovative and creative, and he's single-minded about it.
Elijah is innately intelligent, doesn't have a care in the world, just kind of goes along and, you know, girls and fun and whatever, that kind of thing. Very charming, very charming.
Although they tried to make a go of their marriage, Greg's drug and alcohol problems were too great for Cher to overcome. They were officially divorced in 1977.
When you're sober and when you don't use drugs and you're with somebody that does, and they don't choose to stop, you can no longer live with them.
During this time, Sonny found that creating a solo career was no easy task. The act he created with Cher, in which he most often played the fool, had been too convincing. No one took his immense talent seriously anymore.
He allowed himself to be put down, and very brilliantly so, so well that people thought he was really that guy. And when Cher was gone, it was over. He had nothing left. He lost the medium that he was using to create the stardom.
I was lost. I had thought that Sonny and Cher would be forever, and I never had any other picture in my mind. It never even dawned on me that that just wouldn't be. So when we split up, it was such a surprise to me that it put me into shock.
In 1976, both Sonny and Cher were having trouble establishing successful solo television careers. Looking for success, they reconciled their professional relationship and teamed up again with The Sonny and Cher Show. Unfortunately, the magic was gone, and the show lasted just 2 lackluster seasons.
Well, once they got back together after they were divorced, the show went from being funny to just surreal. They re-debuted their show with Cher visibly pregnant with Greg Allman's child. These people are divorced, and everyone knows these people don't get along, so how can she come out and tell short jokes and mean jokes and Sonny, you're so stupid, and he complain about her nose? It was too real. It was horrible.
Sonny and Cher realized that their tried and true formula for success was no longer working. They both remained devoted to their young daughter and shared joint custody of Chastity. Sonny and Cher knew it was time to separate both personally and professionally. In the years ahead, each would struggle to create an independent life. Coming up next, Sonny begins to stir things up.
Showbiz, you have to wait for the phone to ring, and that gets really old.
And Cher strikes Oscar gold when Famous Families returns. By 1981, Sonny Bono's once hot entertainment career had cooled. No longer tied to Hollywood, Sonny relocated to the more idyllic Palm Springs.
Palm Springs is still a community, so you know everybody. I really like that community life.
It was during this time a friend set Sonny up on a fateful blind date. Sonny was immediately smitten with a beautiful young model, Susie Coelho.
I remember Jay said, Sonny Bono's going to join us for dinner, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. You know, I used to watch the Sonny and Cher show. I kind of thought it was going to be, you know, just a really fun treat. We just sort of hit it off.
At first, Susie's mother didn't approve of Sonny.
And she was really nervous that now I was going to be going out with somebody who was almost 20 years older, and I was barely 20. So it was, you know, it was definitely something to be concerned about.
Following the cancellation of the Sonny and Cher show, Sonny's career went into a nosedive.
So then he decided to take his own solo act on the road, and that's when I met him. And it was very sad because nobody wanted to come and see Sonny without Cher. So there would be audiences of 25 people, 10 people, and I would just sit in the audience just with tears rolling down my eyes because it was such a sad sight.
Susie also found it hard to shake the shadow of Sonny and Cher.
The paparazzi was following us everywhere we went, and I was sort of the home wrecker, and I was the third person. This was sort of all part of the inauguration of being part of the Sonny and Cher life, because when you were with Sonny, you weren't just with Sonny. And that's just the way it was.
In December of 1981, Susie Coelho became Sonny's third wife.
Susie is a doll. She's a total doll. We liked her a lot. She kind of brought the family back, you know, into the right kilter again.
After marrying Susie, Sonny chose a career outside of show business and became a restaurateur. Bono's restaurant opened in Hollywood in 1983.
So he decided, I'm going to open up a restaurant. I make good steak Bono, people will come. And so there we ended up with Bono's. I managed the restaurant for a while. You know, he was the chef for a while. We'd greet the guests together, we had a big opening, and we had this hugely successful restaurant.
No, I haven't given up show business. I like doing this because it keeps me extremely busy. I can work 24 hours a day if I want. And showbiz, you have to wait for the phone to ring, and that gets really old, you know. I love it, I'll still do it, but now I don't have to just do that.
Even during his marriage to Susie, Sonny kept a constant, if sometimes strained, relationship with Cher.
Sonny would get on the phone and talk to Cher. But we'd get off the phone and there'd be a cloud. And I knew this was very tough on him. The relationship was strange, and he even had a hard time understanding it.
The strains in her marriage to Sonny finally proved too much for Susie.
I think I had grown up. I wanted it to be my life. I didn't want it to be Sonny's life. And I didn't want it to be Sonny and Cher's life. So it was very hard for me to gain that independence.
Ironically, it was at the restaurant Sonny had started with Susie that he would meet Mary Whitaker. Sonny and Mary were wed in Palm Springs in February of 1986, and this time Sonny was convinced it would last.
It's a real marriage. It's probably the first real marriage I've ever had. We're both really aware that it's something you have to work at and keep the thing that you had during the honeymoon period going all the time.
While Sonny was finding happiness with Mary, Cher was returning to her first passion, acting.
She was not just the creation of Sonny. She needed time to find herself, really, and she proved that there was a lot of talent there, especially with acting.
Wanting to be taken seriously as a dramatic actress, Cher began auditioning for parts in films and plays. She was cast in a lead role in Robert Altman's Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean.
She wanted to read from Mike Nicholas, you know, and he wouldn't let her. He said, "No, Cher, you're a musical comedy, you know, television and so on." And so he saw her on Broadway in Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, and went backstage and he said, "You know, you're right, you are a really good actress." He said, "How would you like to do a movie with Meryl Streep?" She said, "I'd love it." And that's how Silkwood came about.
Cher was cast as Meryl Streep's lesbian friend in Mike Nichols' film Silkwood, and her film career took off.
I love you, dear. I love you too. I don't mean I love you too. No, that's not what you mean. That's what I mean.
Hollywood insiders scoffed at the notion of Cher in such a serious role, but when the film was released, Cher earned an Academy Award nomination for her work.
I love her voice, but I love her acting. I just love her acting. I think she does such a brilliant job. I know I'm a mother, but I'm very critical, and I sit there and I look and I think, God, she did it perfect. She did everything perfect, you know? I mean, I think her performances are just superb. I really do. She doesn't think so, but I do.
Cher was further honored with a Best Actress award at the Cannes Film Festival for her role opposite Eric Stoltz in Mask. Then, Cher was offered the part of a lifetime, the leading role in Moonstruck.
I've seen Moonstruck 14 or 15 times. If I get depressed or something, I just put that on and it just lifts me right up.
Already a much honored and respected actress, Cher won a Best Actress Oscar for her role in Moonstruck.
There is no one else I can think of off the top of my head that was performing in the 60s as a rock star who is now as famous and has won an Oscar for a performance, who has so much talent bottled up inside of one body. It's wonderful.
Cher was now in such great demand as an actress that she had little time for anything else.
It was the last movie I had done of 3 movies back to back to back with literally like a day in between. We couldn't move Moonstruck, and so Moonstruck had to go in between Suspect or not be done, and I didn't really want to let everyone down, so we just went ahead and did it, and then I flew right from Moonstruck to Suspect.
But in addition to her busy film career, Cher was still maintaining a hectic schedule of sold-out concerts and club appearances. She also continued to record and to tour internationally. Exhausted from her frantic work pace, Cher decided to take some much-needed time off. In 1990, Cher withdrew from the spotlight for nearly 6 years.
I'm pretty happy with things that most people would think are boring. My life is so glamorous that I just as soon sit home and read or watch CNN or Beat or, you know, go to the movies. I like those kind of things.
Just as Cher was retreating from the public eye, Sonny was returning. But this time, Sonny Bono had his eye on a new career in politics. When we return, Palm Springs gets a hip new leader.
So that ruffled my feathers, so I went, oh yeah, okay, I'll run for mayor.
And the country loses an American pop icon.
And for me, that person is Sonny Bono.
Next on Famous Families.
Bono's on Fox Family Channel.
While Cher had been busy in the international spotlight, Sonny Bono and his wife Mary were leading a quiet, peaceful life in Palm Springs. When Sonny ran into red tape with the local city council over a sign for his restaurant, he decided to enter local politics. A conservative all his life, Sonny had always been politically minded and active in social causes, such as his lifelong crusade against drug abuse.
If you become a pothead, you risk blowing the most important time of your life, your teenage. That unrepeatable time for you to grow up and make something meaningful out of life.
Sonny's frustration with the city council made him take action.
You're not my mother or dad. I'm talking, so be quiet.
They gave me a hard time, so that ruffled my feathers. So I went, oh yeah, okay, I'll run for mayor.
Ironically, it was on the eve of Sonny's election that Cher won her Oscar for Moonstruck.
And then I thought, oh my God, if she wins this thing and I lose the election, do you know that no one will get off that for about 10 more years?
Sonny Bono did win the election, and Sonny the politician was born.
I could see he was kind of grappling for a new career, and the political arena seemed to provide that for him.
This is absolutely the hardest I've ever worked in my life, but I don't have the insanity attached to the ambition.
Soon after becoming mayor, Sonny and Mary's first child, son Cesare Ilan, was born. 3 years later, their daughter Chiana would join the family.
My priorities have changed so much. My family comes first. I could handle losing everything, but I couldn't handle losing my family.
Meanwhile, Sonny's older daughter Chastity was going through a difficult time. Chastity, who had tried her hand at recording with little success, was outed by the tabloid magazine The Star.
That hurt a lot. I mean, I knew she was gay a long, long time before. It was very painful because she wasn't ready, you know?
When the tabloid story appeared, Sonny was extremely supportive.
Now, Sonny, from what we all understand, since he was told first, accepted it rather quickly. And he told Cher.
Cher had more difficulty accepting the situation.
She said, I thought Chas was going to, you know, grow up and get married and get divorced and live happily ever after like everybody else, you know?
So, of course, I had the very un-Cher-like reaction to Chas's coming out. Like, oh my God, what did I do? I wasn't a good mother. We didn't bake cookies. I thought it must be something that I did.
And then when she understood and embraced Chastity's lifestyle, I mean, that was a coup. That's what people long for with their families, is a total unconditional acceptance.
I thought it must be something that I did, but it wasn't anything I did. It was just something that I did. You know, it was something great that I did, that I helped her.
Despite Sonny's initial support of her lifestyle, Chastity found herself at odds with her father's conservative political views, and their relationship became strained.
I don't know exactly how he became a Republican, but I think that he had traditional values and beliefs.
The conservatism comes from the fact that he was a businessman. I mean, he always has been a businessman, and that's not to say that a businessman and an artist are completely contrary. One has to be both, because then you can have artistic creativity.
He was far less Republican than anybody I know at one point, you know, except for Cher. I mean, Cher would never be a Republican.
In 1994, Sonny was elected to the United States Congress as a representative of the 44th District in California.
From pop star to restaurant owner to completely shifting around his musical style to become a Vegas, you know, performer and having a TV show to being a congressman. I mean, it's 5 careers. And that, for me, was remarkable.
While Sonny was gaining the respect of his Republican colleagues in Congress, Cher made a return to film in 1996 with her directorial debut on HBO's critically acclaimed If These Walls Could Talk. Her career was regaining momentum, and the future was looking bright for both Sonny and Cher. Then, on the morning of January 5th, 1998, the Bono family received tragic news.
My mother called me. It was about 5:30 in the morning, and I knew that something was terribly wrong. She said, Sonny's dead. He was killed in a skiing accident.
excuse my papers, but I've been writing this stupid eulogy for the last 48 hours, and of course I know that this would make Sonny really happy. This is probably the most important thing I've ever done in my life.
Sonny was like the father that Cher never had. He was her friend, he was her mentor, and he was her husband, you know? So he was many things to her, and I don't think she realized the tremendous depth of her feeling.
I wanted to tell Mary and Chezzy and Gianna how proud I am of what he made himself after we were separated and his accomplishments. And I know that a person just doesn't decide to become a congressman in the middle of their life and then be one, but it's so typically Sonny to do something so crazy like that.
And we're not used to seeing her break down like that because she doesn't. That's why it was, well, it was just so amazing to see that amount and the depth of that emotion.
The last thing I want to say is, when I was young, there was this section in the Reader's Digest, and it was called The Most Unforgettable Character I've Ever Met. And for me, that person is Sonny Bono. And no matter how long I live or who I meet in my life, that person will always be Son for me. Thank you.
It was a tragedy that touched the nation. Cher had given the eulogy at Mary Bono's request. Though heartbroken, Mary found the grace to manage her private grief in the public eye.
She handled herself with such dignity and caring and made everybody feel welcome, but, you know, walked that line between, you know, the grief she was feeling and taking care of her children and being, you know, his representative to the people. I mean, there were congressmen there, and then all these hip and groovy Hollywood people, you know? That was Sonny. Those were all his people.
Although Sonny Bono has died, the image of Sonny and Cher will forever hold a place in our memories. In spite of Sonny's untimely demise, the beat goes on. When we return, Mrs. Bono goes to Washington.
My children are extremely proud of me. They're proud that I'm a congresswoman. They're also just proud I'm their mom.
And Cher returns to Hollywood.
Chastity, are you sufficiently proud of me now?
Next on Famous Families. In the time since Sonny Bono's death, his many relatives have grown closer together. Cher and Mary were among the many family members present when in 1998, Sonny and Cher received a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. More than 30 years after their first burst onto the pop music scene, Sonny and Cher are still a much beloved part of our cultural history.
The icon of Sonny and Cher reminds us of that freedom of youth. It's just the two of us against the world. And that's not a bad way of thinking.
At recent casting calls for a television movie about their lives, thousands of Sonny and Cher wannabes showed up, each hoping to portray their idols.
I've watched Cher since I was 5 years old with my saltines and my Kool-Aid in front of the little black and white TV watching Cher. It was awesome.
And I think Sonny was really an underappreciated human being, and I'm really hopeful that this story is gonna, you know, show the whole picture.
Although Sonny is gone, life goes on for Cher, Mary, Chastity, and the rest of Sonny's extended family. Cher continues her singing and acting careers. In 1998, she released her chart-topping album, Believe, and published her autobiographical book, The First Time, cataloging all her first-time experiences. Cher was also honored by the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation for her public support of gay rights.
Chastity, are you sufficiently proud of me now?
Chastity continues her work for gay and lesbian issues and has written a book including her personal experiences intended to help gay and lesbian children and their families achieve more understanding.
Her book, Family Outing, will probably save more lives, more kids, young kids who are trying to deal with being different.
Cher's son, Elijah Blue, continues his parents' musical legacy with his band, Dead Z.
I love Elijah. I love Elijah. The most unusual little boy, got his own band now, and keeps saying he's going on tour, and I dread it, but he says he's going to.
Sonny's niece, Carol, is also pursuing her own musical career as a singer-songwriter.
And every time he'd send me out the door and say, okay, go back home and keep working. So that was the advice he gave me, and it was good advice.
Sonny's eldest daughter, Christy Bono, carries on Sonny's tradition of good Italian food at her Long Beach restaurant.
The kids are all real close. Chas is close with Mary Bono's kids, very close, in fact. And Christy, it's like a family. I don't know how to tell you. It's just all like one. We're all hooked in. You know, we're all spokes to the wheel. You know.
Sonny's third wife, Susie Coelho, hosts her own show, The Surprise Gardener, for the Home and Garden Channel. Mary Bono carried on Sonny's political legacy by running for his congressional seat. On April 7, 1998, Mary was elected to Congress with 64% of the vote.
My children are extremely proud of me. They're proud that I'm a congresswoman. They're also just proud I'm their mom.
She has since served on the House Judiciary Committee in the impeachment of President Bill Clinton. Cher's mother, Georgia, lives in Palm Desert and is currently working on her memoirs.
I'm a very deeply spiritual person, and I think that we're all connected. I think we're all connected. I don't know, you know, it's when you're in a family, it's like you stand together.
Individually, Sonny and Cher have influenced everything in our culture, from music to fashion to politics. But it's the magic they created together we will always remember.
A boy that used to deliver meat and a girl that just went to the 10th grade in school could become world famous stars, you know, just through perseverance and will and wanting it.
They were part of our family. They were an extended part of our family, and it just happened that they were stars, you know, and they were who they were.
Since Sonny's death, the extended Bono family has grown closer together, and although they will continue to feel the loss of Sonny, his memory will always live on in their hearts.
Oh, Sonny, where have you gone? One day you were fine, the next day angels carried you off. I hadn't seen you for such a long time, and when the phone rang, I didn't know the news on the other line. Oh, Sonny, you're gone, but your beat goes on. Sonny's gone, but the beat goes on.
I remember watching Sonny and Cher when I was growing up. Even though Cher made fun of Sonny, she did it in such a loving way that I couldn't help but laugh. They always seemed to be having so much fun. What I recognized even back then was that underneath all the wisecracks and the wild clothes, behind all the music and funny skits, these were two people who loved each other very, very much. And for all of us who watched them on TV every week, they're forever together in our hearts as Sonny and Cher.